Hi, this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and today I'm going to be presenting a game from the semifinals of the 2011 Candidates Tournament. And this is a game, a must-win game, Game 4 of the match regulation time between Gata Kamsky of the United States and Boris Gelfand representing Israel. And this was a must-win game for Gelfand, as Kamsky had won Game 3 and required only a draw to progress to the finals of this Candidates Tournament. So Gelfand was definitely in a bind here, and Kamsky opened with e4, which I thought was kind of questionable, as Gelfand certainly plays the Sicilian very well, and it allows Black to achieve a very double-edged position in the opening, which Kamsky only needed to draw to win. So I understand he didn't want to change his match strategy, as he had, obviously prepared e4, but I just don't like the idea of allowing Gelfand to complicate the game so much so early with the opening choice. So with knight c6 and now d4, queen b6. So Black was going into a Sicilian now with the queen b6 so early. It was very regular, but I can only imagine that Gelfand just wants to immediately change the course of the game. No opening preparation for Kamsky. And I'm sure the queen b6 move has been seen before, but it's very rare. And so there's two choices. Knight f3 doesn't seem very natural here, or bringing the knight back to b3, which is essentially the standard treatment against this queen b6 move. Knight f6 and now knight c3, very very standard stuff. So the early queen move, it does allow White to develop later with develop the bishop by attacking the queen. But it has also forced the knight to go back to b3 without having to play e5, weakening the d5 square. So e6, now Black is probably thinking something along the lines of bishop b4, putting a pin on this knight, and thus more pressure on the center. So White responds with bishop d3, just overprotecting the pawn on e4. Now, if bishop b4 was simply bishop d2 is a fine answer, or even just castling straight away. So Black plays bishop e7, reserving the right to play d7, d5 in one go here. And so now castles, and a4. So Kamsky wants to go ahead and put some pressure on that queen and take control of that b5 square. So d6, and now bishop e3. And now in this position, Kamsky, he played f4. I would have considered the immediate a5. I think that's a good idea, but it's understandable. He plays f4 because maybe a5 immediately is going to run into d5, and Black is going to go ahead and open the position up, which is definitely to his advantage. So he played f4, now b6. So that was the idea of playing a5. A move earlier was to inhibit b6, because now Black is going to get his bishop along this diagonal, exerting a lot of pressure throughout the course of the game. So queen f3 is a very standard move in these types of positions. As so with a4, Black is not going to be able to achieve the b5 break. So in this is a Shevinigan, but it kind of looks like a hedgehog as we continue going through the game. The main thematic breaks for Black are going to be to play something like a6 and b5, or to achieve the d5 break. And in many cases, he plays e5 first to break the center and control the d4 square, and then d5 as well. So there's a lot of instructive games on this. I would encourage listeners to refer to some early Kasparov games. And so going through it, c3, and this is where I think Kamsky starts losing the thread of the game. He has 16 minutes here, and Gelfand has 24 minutes. Now, the players started with 25 minutes each, and with a 10-second increment. And I think c3, Kamsky has some idea of playing the knight to d4, and if captures, well, then c takes d4 with a strong center. However, the immediate e5 by Gelfand, okay, the knight's not coming. The knight's not going to be rerouted back to the center. It's going to have to go back to a3, and c3 is weakening the light squares in the white positions. So the white squares have definitely been weakened. So now f5 just seems kind of like a blunder by Kamsky. I mean, he doesn't want to allow takes, and the knight to e5 is going to be good for black. But f5 just is asking for the following combinations. So a6, forcing knight to a3. So the knight's kind of out of the game for white, while black's pieces are really exerting some pressure on the center. So d5, a very standard thematic break in this type of position, and it simply opens up everything in black's favor here. Now, what's going on? It looks like white can win this d5 pawn. He's also threatening to win the b6 pawn. Well, what's really going on is he doesn't have time to take either one of those, because taking on d5, which is really the main, the first move to consider, is just going to let all of black's pieces just develop wonderfully to attack the white king, and really just the white center, because both these knights are just out of the game and they're just spectators. So if e takes d5, you would see e4, and now moves like queen e2 or queen d1 are just going to run straight into knight e5, and black is going to have an excellent advantage after just a sample line here. Maybe knight takes d5, and you can see black is just crushing here. So that's not going to work out well. So e4. So what if white tries to take the pawn? So in this position, he would be up 2 pawns. However, black is going to have some excellent piece play as compensation. Knight to e5, forcing queen to f4 to guard the bishop on e4. And now just very simply bishop d6. And it doesn't seem like white is going to be able to hold on to his extra material. He's going to give at least a pawn back. Black is going to have a ton of pressure along this diagonal, hitting the h2 pawn in many combinations. He's also going to pick off the d5 pawn almost surely, and it's just too much. Black's just got too much coordination here. Again, the white knights are just spectators. So in light of that, Kamsky plays knight to d2, trying to reinforce his center. Definitely a logical move. Doesn't want to open the position up too much, especially with his knights. If he could get his rooks in the middle to help out, maybe it'd be all right. So now queen d8, I guess, just to put a little bit of pressure on the d file, as the bishop on d3 is kind of weak, and also guards the b6 pawn. So bishop f2, and Kamsky, I just kind of lost the thread of the game here. Bishop f2, I just simply don't get it. I mean, why not rook d1, rook f d1, anything, but bishop f2, he just defends the bishop on d3, but does not develop the rook. So now after d4, okay, so maybe that was why bishop f2, Kamsky wanted to kind of loosen the effect of that. Queen to e2, just regrouping, and I think Kamsky had to concede here that his strategy was busted. And that, okay, he's got to concede some ground and say, okay, black has got an advantage here, but how much is it? Because, again, Kamsky only needed to draw this game to win. So playing, you don't want to play for the draw in these positions, but I think c4 just makes sense for white in this position. If you can just shore up on the queen side, not going to get much of an attack on the king side. It's just not going to happen. There's just not enough pieces there yet. But, if you can just shore up on the queen side and play defense, all you got to do is draw to progress to the next round. But Kamsky, knight b3. I don't understand the move. I mean, is he trying to control the c5 square? I just don't get it. And so now king h1, okay, a prophylactic move. And now bishop takes a3 and simply knight c5. And what has white been doing with these moves? What has he accomplished? So I just don't understand why. And the knight b3 plan, now it's too late to play c4 because black is going to really come in strong. And in this kind of situation, it's not the same thing as before because black is going to have a lot of pressure along the b file. And he's just got a lot of space, not to mention the protected pass pawn on d4. So bishop c4, so he's trying to play somewhat actively, although the rook on a3 is very misplaced and the rook on f1 is not doing anything. So at this point, both players are down to about 8 minutes with a 10-second increment. So now knight a5, a fantastic maneuver by Gelfand. If knight takes, this is just going to reinforce the black pawns in the center, and black is going to achieve a breakthrough, no doubt about it. So Kamsky decides to take, and now you see these doubled pawns, but they're really not bad because the open b file is going to be more than compensation for the doubled pawns on the a file. Not to mention they're controlling some critical squares. So queen to h5. Introducing a threat, but not a very forcing move. So queen to c7, black just improves the position. And white would love to play c takes d4, but simply knight takes e4, and there's just so many threats by black in this position. It's very tough for him to hold on, for white to maintain. So bishop d5 here, trying to slow it down and negate some of the attacking potential of black along that diagonal. Well, the problem is, after knight e4, white cannot play c takes d4 because he will get back rank mated in embarrassing fashion. So that's not going to work out. So he plays bishop to g1 in a defensive crouch. And here, a nice move, queen c4 by Gelfand. White moves the rook back, and now black is up a pawn. So it may not seem like a lot because these pawns are doubled, but white has nothing. He has no play in this position. The queen is misplaced on h5. The pawn on f5 is not going anywhere. And to top it all off, black now has protected passed pawns in the center with d3. So queen to f3 and simply rook d8, and black's position essentially plays itself. He's achieved protected passed pawns in the center, and white doesn't have any real targets. Yes, he can win this pawn on a5, but black's pawns are already way too advanced in the center, and white's just not going to be able to get it going with the c pawn alone. So rook c8, a nice move. Gelfand had about 4 minutes here, Kamsky about 1 minute. So rook c8, a nice move, not giving white any counterplay, and the knight's doing a great job of holding down the pawns in the center. So h3, making Luft for the white king, possibly preparing g4, and h5. So another nice move by Gelfand, not allowing white any counterplay. You know, if white can try to disturb that knight on f6, maybe he'll have some chance to pick off these pawns in the center. Well, h5 makes Luft for black's king and also prevents g4 by white. White wants to get his king in the game, and simply bishop takes a5. He's trying. Kamsky had about 40 seconds here, so he was really holding on for dear life. And with a simple move, rook c4, protecting the pawn on e4, bishop takes, and now it's just all over. I mean, there's no way for white to win these pawns. And if he can't win the pawns, obviously, there's nothing he's going to be able to do. So after Gelfand here, 3 minutes, Kamsky 40 seconds. So Kamsky's really in some trouble. And simply rook takes g2. Now king takes e4, doesn't work. Simply check. So after c5, and in this position, Kamsky resigned as his flag was about to fall. So he's just hopelessly lost in this position. Black's going to round up the c5 pawn and just roll these passed pawns, and there's nothing white can do. So what a game by Boris Gelfand. I was skeptical of Kamsky's play here. I think the pressure really got to him. It just didn't seem like a very well thought out game plan, as he only needed to draw the game. So I think opening with d4 in this game, I think would have been a better choice by Kamsky. So definitely be interesting to see the finals between Boris Gelfand and Alexander Grishchuk of Russia. So this is William Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.